Hello, hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk H.P. Lovecraft and Let's Talk Short Fiction. Yeah, getting back to Lovecraft after a good week off, doing other things. Did some Ray Bradbury reviews and some other short story reviews. But back into Lovecraft land. Planned on doing this one last week. Had to refresh myself again this morning and get some notes ready for this video. So yeah, the Dunwich Horror. It's one of the core stories of the Cthulhu Mythos. One of my favorites. I guess he was forever fond of it too. Written, or published in April 1929 in Weird Tales. And like so much of his work, this is set in fictional New England, this time near the town of Dunwich in fictional Massachusetts, which is a sort of colonial era dilapidated, sort of off the beaten path city whose time has come and gone. You know, there's ruins in the area of older structures, and the structures and the families that remain have sort of fallen to decay, and they've sort of gone backwards culturally. And it's a town that people avoid. They even took down the road signs pointing in the direction of the town, which I can kind of relate to. There's a lot of little towns in this area of Pennsylvania, towns that have gone, towns that are dying, and yeah, I can certainly relate to that ghost town thing. But this place has a bad reputation for centuries. Things to do with sort of the witch trial era, and of course the Native American inhabitants who lived there first. The hills are said to rumble, and people associated that with sacrifices and ceremonies and all manner of supernatural things. But the focal point of this story is the house of Old Man Wheatley, the grandfather and the patriarch of this very, very fallen into decay family, abiding in a very, very decayed old mansion. And at the time of the story's beginning, he's living with his daughter Lavinia, who is this sort of grotesque-looking, oddball, albino woman who very unsightly, and suddenly she's pregnant, and there's a lot of speculation in the town about who the father is, and old Wheatley talks about it, saying, yeah, you couldn't find a better man, but never mind the fact that that he's not around, and that they didn't get married. Of course, this leads to speculation. On my part, as the reader, I got thinking, okay, who is this creepy little child, this creepy little goat-faced child named Wilbur? The goat symbolism obviously speaks to Satan, but of course you all know that Satan's not really Lovecraft's angle so much. But there's that, and then there's the other possibility. Well, maybe it's her father's child. Maybe it's an incest thing, which would be very much in keeping with sort of the vibe that Lovecraft has set for so many years. But yeah, goat-faced Wilbur, Lavinia's little black brat, as they call him, he grows unusually quickly. By 11 months old, he's talking and walking. By the time he's 5, he looks like a teenager, and he grows to a massive 9 foot tall. During the upbringing of the child, old Wheatley does some renovation work in the house, and nobody's been in there, but they get the idea that, looking at the debris, that he's pulled out the walls and sort of opened the place up to accommodate something which they do not know. But he did do some work on the old library. There was piles of sort of decaying, arcane, obscure texts that old Wheatley says will be the sole source of education for Wilbur growing up. And the other odd thing that happens during this time is they start buying a lot of cattle, and people who pass through the area sort of notice that the the size of the herd never seems to grow. Therefore, this sort of creates the idea or the thought that maybe they're sacrificing cows, or are they feeding something with these animals. And there's always this smell of decay in the property, which again sort of falls in line with that thinking. But then the family starts dying off. Lavinia dies under sort of mysterious circumstances, but otherwise they don't say. And the thought is that possibly the old man or Wilbur sacrificed her, or just plain right murdered her. And then the old man dies. He in his last breaths he utters a prophecy about a being named Yog-Sothoth, but nobody really knows what's going on here. And then after his death, that means Wilbur is on his own to continue whatever work they were up to. He continues his studies of the arcane text, but there's something that he needs, some last spell to complete whatever this process is, this mysterious process. He goes to the fictional Miskatonic University, and he wants to take out their rare original copy of the Necronomicon. The librarian won't let him. He sort of fears what this guy is up to, and because of this, he comes back the next night, Wilbur that is, and he's attacked by the security dogs and killed. And this sort of gets the opportunity for them to see what lies beneath his clothing, and they find this sort of part goat, part reptile, part human hybrid, who is apparently a son of Yog-Sothoth, who is this outer dimensional member of the outer gods, beings, basically for all intents and purposes, gods from beyond our space, from beyond our dimension, the kind of places that you can't fly to in a ship, but they're out there unseen, but sometimes interacting with our universe. And the librarian, now concerned about what they were up to, starts looking into it. And so whatever being they were, Old Wheatley and Wilbur were calling forth or growing or summoning or breeding, raising in their house and in the hillside beyond, it's left unattended. And that being the case, it gets angry and strikes out on its own. Basically, the house explodes. And this thing, the Dunwich Horror, goes on a killing spree, a damaging killing spree through the area of Dunwich, killing many families. And so then this librarian and some of his professor friends and some of the local police, using the knowledge from the Necronomicon and these other books, they concoct a potion, sort of a powder, a lethal powder, that will kill the creature. But the creature is not apparently Yog-Sothoth himself, but Wilbur's monstrous twin brother, who's been pulled into our dimension by these decades or these years of witchcraft that they've been concocting. But this twin brother of Wilbur is more like its father than Wilbur is. It got more of the power. It's like this story, the funny stories you hear about, yeah, I ate my twin in utero. It's kind of like that. But Yog-Sothoth himself, one of the outer gods, is of course much, much worse. Thankfully, he has not been allowed into our universe. Alright guys, so this is quintessential Lovecraft. It's a little bit longer than some of these stories I've been reviewing lately from him, but there's this sort of slow build up, and it's kept intentionally vague for quite a bit, but then in the last few pages when everything becomes revealed, it actually is revealed, whereas in like Pickman's Model and some of these other ones, Dagon, or like those stories, he actually goes all in, and we get to see the creature that is lurking the hillsides of the Mystotonic Valley. So yeah, this really is an important part of the Cthulhu Mythos, introducing these beings, this class of beings from beyond our world that is unique to the work of Lovecraft and those that he inspired, the Lovecraftian writers who sort of surrounded him. One of the major themes, and I'll leave you with this, that runs through so much of Lovecraft's work is this idea of racial and cultural degradation. You know, it's slight hints of racism, you know, but this idea that these people out here in the sticks are fallen far below their ancestors who were sort of more aristocratic, sort of immigrants from England and the colonial era, that by coming to the New World and then engaging in these sinful acts and this interaction with witchcraft and with these cults, the Cthulhu cults and things like that, they've fallen. And what's really interesting about this is typically today, if you look at, and not just today, the last 50 years or so, if you look at films and books, usually the power-seeking cultists they're aristocrats, and they're seeking to improve or increase their power and their influence by tapping into these powers. But here we have this sort of fallen, degenerate family of, you know, inbred freaks. They're the ones doing it. But apparently, you know, judging by the house and the library that was there, that their family at one time was sort of the more highborn, but they've fallen to this lower level, and yet they've managed to pass down this idea, you know, these cult ideas of bringing Yog-Sothoth into the world. They've managed to carry that down, so here they are, sort of these lowlifes who are dealing in these very arcane books and spells and very sophisticated forms of witchcraft, for lack of a better word, but they're still doing it. So it's an interesting juxtaposition of those two themes, and really, it's he's the only author that I can think of right now who really does this. In other words, who have done it and were no doubt influenced by him. So yeah, guys, that is the Dunwich Horror, one of the great tales of H.P. Lovecraft, highly recommended. And since you're here, since you're still listening, please subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you again soon.